A fan favorite and a locker room favorite, likely gone.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Heyo, we're wrapping up the month of February right here on Locked On Lions, Locked On Podcast Network on a Friday, February 28th into Saturday, March 1st. Matt Derry with you. Thank you for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. It is a Friday edition of Locked On Lions. We'll talk Combine. We will talk Jalen Reeves-Maybin. We will talk needs for the Lions, even though General Manager Brad Holmes has said it. They are not a needs-based team when it comes to drafting, but saw something on a graphic today on NFL Network, and I wanted to bring that up coming up momentarily. And Matthew Stafford in the news as well, as it appears he is going to stay with the Rams. Locked On Lions today brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So thank you to our everydayers that are out there that watch and listen to the podcast daily. Appreciate all of you. If you want to be a call of the day, we'll do that on Monday. Please send a voicemail to speakpipe.com/Dairy podcast page, and you too can be our call of the day if you have something on your mind. In regards to the Lions, keep it maybe under a minute. Don't swear, and we might play it on the show. I don't know why I'm leading with this, but I decided to. The news came out yesterday and broke from numerous reporters that Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who is due a $500,000 roster bonus tomorrow, is going to be released by the Lions in the next 24 to 48 hours. Jalen Reeves-Maybin is kind of an unsung hero, a Dan Campbell type, a prototypical Detroit Lion for the last handful of years. He was drafted by the team back in 2017. Right, he's a 30-year-old linebacker that is mostly a backup, great special teams player, and a captain. He's been the Lions special teams captain, I believe, the last 2 years. But Germ, as he is known by his teammates and Dan Campbell, is going to be released by the team. It'll save them about $2 million in cap space. And again, they would not have to pay him his $500,000 roster bonus if they release him today, tomorrow, because that is due on March 1st. Let me just say this about this man. He went through a lot of crap with this organization, especially during the Quinn Trisha era. He's never been a star. He's never been a starter, really, at linebacker. He's basically been a special teamer. But Jalen Reeves-Maybin has been a valuable member of this team. Now, you wonder, let's say the Lions cut him. Do they maybe find a way to bring him back at a lesser salary? If there's an injury in training camp to one of the linebackers, would they try to trade for him again and send some future considerations or future draft picks to get him? It always seems like Jalen Reeves-Maybin somehow always lands back with the Lions. Remember, he was with the team in 2017 and for a few years, then ended up going down to Houston. Then he came back. This is a guy that just bleeds Honolulu blue and silver. And while he is not a star by any stretch of the imagination, this is one of those veteran players that waded through the crap, swam through the abyss. And when the Lions finally won the division 2 seasons ago, it was Dan Campbell in the locker room calling up players like Frank Ragnow, Taylor Decker, Khalif Raymond, guys that have been with the team a long time. And he called up Jalen Reeves-Maybin to be a part of that group. Will Harris was a part of that group 2 years ago when they won the division, because these are the types of players that have been unselfish, that have gone through the ringer, that have been on bad teams, but were always great leaders and always guys that did whatever they asked them to do. Reeves-Maybin did not have a great season this year as a linebacker. Two years ago, he played a lot, especially on third downs, and did a really nice job. This year, I know he was injured for part of the season and everything else. But just as good a special teamer as there is, has made Pro Bowls before as special teamers as a Lion, and is going to be missed if he is not back. Now, again, the Lions have some roster decisions to make. They are currently, I think, 10th in cap space. I think they got about $51 million to spend. So I think they're in pretty decent shape. But there are going to be some decisions to make on some veteran players in order to free up money to re-sign their own guys, other free agents, unrestricted free agents from other teams, and to move some money around. Graham Glasgow could be a guy that could be a cap casualty. DJ Reader could be a cap casualty. There are other options on this roster. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, though, as it came out yesterday, just a great dude, man. Awesome leader. And you can't say enough about those types of players that were unselfish, Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell type of guys that fit in that locker room and led. The Lions have had some very, very young players come through the system and need to learn from the vets. And he was one of those veteran players, Jalen Reeves-Maybin was, that did an outstanding job. So shout out to him. He will be missed. I have some weird feeling that he'll be back. It almost will be like an Andre Fluellen situation. Somehow, some way, Jalen Reeves-Maybin always finds a way to come back to the team, and you never know. You never know. Lions don't burn bridges. Lions treat their players very, very well, as we saw from the NFL PA polling and surveying this week. As the Lions cracked the top 10 in terms of overall team grade. Anybody, by the way, see the Arizona Cardinals grades? Oh my gosh. In that NFL PA team poll, like they were last in almost every category. Like facilities, last, food, last. It was bad. Their coach, Jonathan Gannon, got high marks, but like the rest of their grades were all ownership, last. The Michael Bidwell, like, wow, they just got absolutely torched in that survey. So shout out to Jalen Reeves-Maybin. Hope he finds a home. You got to figure Aaron Glenn and the Jets will be calling him. Aaron Glenn is doing everything in New York with the gang green up there, the Jets, to attempt to change the culture. That's the type of player you bring in. A veteran, great leader, special teamer, will play wherever you ask him to play on the field. That could be a spot, certainly, for JRM, Jalen Reeves-Maybin. But it appears his days are going to be numbered here and done with your Detroit Lions. By the way, Combine tomorrow. If you want to watch some of the quarterbacks throw, unfortunately, Cam Ward will not be throwing. Shedeur Sanders will not be throwing. They're going to show all of that tomorrow on ABC and ESPN. We're going to talk a little Combine. There were some names I wrote down, and I was talking to some folks in Indy today. 3 names stood out as guys that look like Detroit Lions on defense that were a part of the Combine, I guess, studs today and yesterday that we will get into coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Again, thanks for making us your first listen, everybody, and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. If you've not subscribed to our Locked On Lions YouTube channel, please do check us out on the YouTube side daily as well. Here on Locked On Lions as well. Am I doing my FanDuel read first? Yes, I am. All right, coming up next, let's get into something that I saw on television today. Brad Holmes was being interviewed by Mike Garafolo on the NFL Network. And they listed on the bottom of the screen, Lions draft team needs. And I want to read off these team needs and see if you agree with me on my reaction to seeing the needs. They put 5 positions down for Detroit. We'll get into that coming up next. Also, Matthew Stafford going back to the Rams. Could the Giants be after Aaron Rodgers? Could you imagine that scene? Oh my gosh. It was bad with the Jets. Does anybody think it would get any better with the Giants? We'll get into that coming up next as well, right here on Locked On Lions. And the program today brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Pistons are going for 9 straight wins tonight. 9 straight. They're playing the Nuggets. Jokic is in town. Denver played last night. You want to put some shekels down on the Pistons, you can at FanDuel. Because with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. You love using FanDuel's live betting feature, right? Because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Late game rally, you want to bet on the fourth quarter, you can do that. Player props late in the game, you can do that as well on FanDuel. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Was watching some of the combine today and some of the wide receivers that were running the 40-yard dash. Rich Eisen obviously does the play-by-play of the combine. If this guy makes one more Starbucks joke about Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz, I swear to God, I'm going to mute the TV. Like, I don't get the whole Rich Eisen fascination. I don't know if he's popular or not. I've given up on trying to figure out who people like in the media and who people don't. But my gosh, I'm watching and everything's a Starbucks joke. Okay, we get it. It's an old bit from 2 nights ago. Great. Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz got into a fight at Starbucks. Ha, ha, ha. Oh my gosh, Rich, make it stop. I'll tell you what else make it stop. I read a column today by Carlos Menares in the Free Press. This might be the single worst article I've ever read in my life. Oh my God. Holy hell. All right. Lions draft needs. Brad Holmes said it the other day. I'm not going to be a needs-based drafter. We are not drafting a need. We take best available player. And Holmes proved that years ago when everybody said the Lions need defense and they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs 12, and look how good he turned out to be. So yesterday, was it yesterday or today? I was watching the NFL Network, and Brad was being interviewed by Mike Garafolo, one of the reporters at the network. And at the bottom of the screen, well, you know, the graphic says Brad Holmes GM, and at the bottom of the screen, it says Lions draft team needs. What are their needs going into this draft? Every team has needs. We know that. Some teams have a lot more needs than others. But they listed 5 needs for Detroit in this order: edge, cornerback, wide receiver, guard, defensive tackle. Again, edge, corner, receiver, guard, D tackle. First of all, when they put edge up there, you have a hard time disagreeing with that. I mentioned cap casualties before. I believe Zadarius Smith, if the Lions were to let him walk, they would save about $6 or $7 million under the cap. If that could be another cap casualty for this team, he has a roster bonus due soon as well. If Zadarius Smith were to leave, if Levi Onwuzurike were to leave in free agency, and he's not necessarily an edge, he's kind of a tweener, D tackle, and a defensive end. But yes, the Lions could always use another pass rusher. Who couldn't? All right, what team doesn't have edge as a need? You got to get to the passer. So edge rusher for the Lions as a need, number 1 with a bullet, absolutely. Marcus Davenport was hurt. John Kaminsky was hurt. Josh Paschal was meh this year. Got to get another edge rusher. I agree with that need. The second one they mentioned was cornerback. With all the injuries that the Lions had at the end of last season, Khalil Dorsey got hurt. Carlton Davis got hurt. Yes, again, another position where you can't go wrong in drafting a corner, signing a corner, and adding to that room. Remember last year after the draft and free agency, we went, oh my gosh, the Lions have a ton of cornerbacks. They traded for Carlton Davis. They signed Amik Robertson. They drafted 2 corners, Terrion Arnold and Rakestraw, Ennis Rakestraw. And they brought Kindle Vildor back. Also, there were times this season Brian Branch moved up and played corner. I mentioned Dorsey before and others that the Lions trotted out at cornerback this year. So corner as a need, as a number 2 need. If you're talking edge, then corner. I would almost say defensive tackle. That was 5th on the list. They put wide receiver 3rd. If Tim Patrick is not back, I almost said Tim Bryson. That was an inside bit for all you Sandler fans out there. If Tim Patrick's not back, this team is going to need another veteran receiver. Right? We know how good Amon-Ra St. Brown is, how good J-Mo is. Khalif Raymond is just a solid 4th guy that can stretch the field, play in the slot. But yes, wide receiver would be a need if the team elects not to bring back Tim Patrick or another team offers more money than the Lions. So yes, I would put wide receiver as a need. Guard as number 4 was interesting because right now the Lions have their starting guards in Kevin Zeitler and Graham Glasgow. Now, Zeitler is a free agent. Hopefully the Lions bring him back. Glasgow did not have a good year this past year. If Zeitler leaves and they still like Glasgow at left guard and they hope he plays better, you can move Christian Mahogany, last year's 6th-round pick, to right guard. But yeah, team could always use depth along the offensive line. And as I said before, defensive tackle came in at number 5 on this list. These are all pretty accurate. You know, there's no need at quarterback. There's no need at running back. There's no need at tight end. Certainly not linebacker, safety. I think these are pretty accurate assessments by the NFL Network on where Detroit has their needs. I'd almost put edge and D tackle first before cornerback. But again, if Carlton Davis leaves in free agency and the Lions don't, I think the Lions are going to add a veteran corner regardless of whether Davis stays or not. But I thought those were pretty accurate assessments for the needs for Detroit. Again, that was just shown while Brad Holmes was being interviewed on the NFL Network. All right, big news today. The Rams met with Matthew Stafford, the former Lions quarterback, and the 37-year-old signal caller will, in fact, return to L.A. They are restructuring his contract. It sounds like a 2-year extension. Sounds like he's going to get what he wants, which is around $50 million a year. And Matthew Stafford, I never thought he would leave. I know there was some talk about the Raiders and Tom Brady wooing him, and the Raiders were ready to give him a longer extension. There was talk about the Giants trading the 3rd pick to get Stafford. But at the end of the day, Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay kind of belong together in L.A. And my guess, too, is that Kelly Stafford didn't want to move either. But this was a smart move by the Rams. The Rams were right in that playoff game in the divisional round against Philly, right in it, leading in the second half. They got a very good young defense. They got a lot of good skill position players. They're building their offensive line back up again. And Matthew Stafford would be in a much better position with the Rams than being, going to the Browns or the Giants or the Raiders. So this was the right move by the Rams to acquire or reacquire and keep, I should say, Matthew Stafford. The Stafford domino is now fallen, which means now you've got other teams having to jockey for position for these other garbage, serviceable veteran quarterbacks on the market. I'm sorry, Kirk Cousins, awesome at Michigan State, great career with the Vikings. His arm is shot. If anybody watched him play for the Falcons last year. And look, he's still on the Falcons. The Falcons have kind of come out and said their GM Terry Fontenot, he's our backup quarterback right now. They're trying to move him. I'm not sure anybody wants him. Russell Wilson is out there. Justin Fields is out there. Oh, the Hall of Fields. Oh, I missed the Hall of Fields bit. That's right up there with the kicker list bit. Still got the kicker list. I have not burned it yet. Yeah, I haven't decided what I'm doing with it yet. Aaron Rodgers is out there. A lot of rumors. I saw Adam Schefter say today the Giants have been engaged with Aaron Rodgers. Oh, God. Whew. I mean, Aaron Rodgers and the Giants, but these teams need quarterbacks. That's why when you guys come up to me at Meyer or wherever I'm at, and you're like, "Oh, Jared Goff sucks," and I'm like, "Guys, no, he doesn't." You know how many teams would take Jared Goff right now? You know how many bad teams are out there searching for a quarterback? The Saints have come out and said, we're keeping Derek Carr for another year. Oh my gosh. Imagine being a Saints fan and going, wait, we're what? Now, again, they could draft one. Okay. But my goodness. I'll be interested in seeing if a Cleveland or a Giants or a Raiders, somebody moves up to number 1 to try to get Cam Ward. Now that it sounds like Abdul Carter's banged up, and the Penn State edge rusher, who many felt was the best player in this draft, might not be available to start the year because he's got a foot injury. We'll see. All right. Speaking of the combine, got some names for you. The Lions have talked to, got some names for you out of Indy as well that are kind of tearing it up at the combine and could be fits for your Honolulu Blue and Silver Gladiators. We will do that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Don't forget, folks, you can get all of your local teams, Detroit sports teams, on the different podcasts and on the different shows right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Scotty Bentley, host Locked On Tigers, does a great job. Brian Fisher, Locked On Red Wings. Our guy Koo is having a blast. Do Locked On Pistons. Don't forget to check them out wherever you get your podcast. Also, check out Locked On NFL Draft. Those guys do a great job. All across our network here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, our buddy John Macaroon at Lions SI or SI.com/NFL/Lions. All Lions did talk to a few of the receivers today and a quarterback, by the way, who did speak with the Lions about these players did have a formal interview with the Detroit Lions at the Combine in Indianapolis. All right. So the tracker is alive and well. Couple of names that are interesting. Stanford wide receiver Elick Ayamaner is a guy that knows David Shaw very well. Of course, the Lions' new pass game coordinator. Pat Bryant, the wideout from Illinois. Brew McCoy, Tennessee wide receiver, also had a formal interview with the Lions, said he'd love to come to Detroit and feels like he is the fit. He is a fit for Dan Campbell and Detroit. Memphis quarterback Seth Hennigan had an informal chat with the Lions, but this was the one I was surprised about. A formal interview with Detroit, none other than Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. Now, again, all of these teams talk to most of these players, all right? Or most of these teams talk to all these players, whatever. You know what I mean? The Lions are doing their due diligence. But I said this before, Jalen Milroe, if I see one more mock draft with Jalen Milroe going in the first round, I swear to God, I'll be stunned. What is the one thing that most quarterbacks really need to do well? That would be throw a forward pass. Jalen Milroe does not do that. Everybody at the Senior Bowl said it was one of the worst performances by a quarterback they've ever seen. That he was overshooting, undershooting, and could not get it done. But yes, today the Detroit Lions did have a formal interview with Jalen Milroe. What that means, I have no idea. Maybe the Lions envision him playing a different position. I don't even know. There's people, I've seen mock drafts with Pittsburgh, like at 18, taking Jalen Milroe to be their future. I just don't see it. We all watched him in the bowl game against Michigan. And I know it was raining for a part of that game, but man, he struggles just throwing the ball. This is the NFL we're talking about here. This is not, not high school. All right. Combine studs. I watched a guy work out yesterday and I went, sign me up for Detroit right now. And I don't know if anybody of you guys saw this as well. His name is CJ West, defensive tackle from Indiana, who spent the first 3 years of his college career at Kent State. I watched this dude work out yesterday. I couldn't believe it. Number one, he is only the 9th defensive tackle in NFL Combine history to run a 40-yard dash in under 5 seconds. I believe they clocked him at like 4.9. He's 300 pounds. He was running a below 5 40-yard dash as a defensive tackle. The drills with the pads where you smash through the pads, running through the cones. This guy was a stud, CJ West. And Indiana's defense this past year was excellent. Obviously, the Sig 10 coach Kurt Cignetti, went out and got a bunch of transfers, many of them from his old school, James Madison, but he got this kid out of Kent State. And CJ West was really, really impressive just in watching the drills that he took part in at the Combine yesterday. Keep an eye on him. Could be a day 2 or day 3 guy, but man, was he impressive at the Combine. You want to talk about speed for an edge rusher. Another player that was very, very good in Indy and everybody's buzzing about is James Pierce Jr., the defensive end from Tennessee. Had 10 sacks this past year, which led the SEC, and ran the 40-yard dash in 4.5. 4.540 for an edge rusher. Wowzers. Everybody's saying he is making the jump up in this draft. That's James Pierce Jr. Again, lots. I mean, this draft is chock full of edge rushers and defensive tackles. So there's going to be plenty to choose from if you are Bradley Holmes. The last one, and again, I've seen interviews with this guy. This guy sounds like a Lion. All right. I heard him on the NFL, Sirius XM NFL show. I saw an interview he did with Pro Football Talk. Nick Scorton from Texas A&M, 6'3", 257, a little bit undersized, out of A&M. His teammate Shamar Stewart, everybody's talking about as a first-round pick. But this Nick Scorton kid is just salt of the earth. Good edge rusher, good speed, a little bit undersized, but guess what? He could be a guy that when Brad Holmes has talked about this, how Dan Campbell knows talent too, and the two of them work so well together. This may be a scenario where it's like, we think we can get the most out of this player. And while he might not be as good as his teammate was in Stewart on the other edge, this guy is such a culture fit and such a winner and such a great kid that we've got to have him in our locker room. That's Nick, N-I-C, Nick Scorton. Keep an eye on him. Like I said, I was watching a few interviews with him, and he is just impressive. And again, it's not all about interviews. I mean, great talkers sometimes can't play the game, but you see where I'm coming from here. Could be a fit, certainly, especially on the culture side, for the Lions. All right, that'll do it for this Friday edition of Locked On Lions. We'll have more on Monday on the weekend combine stuff and everything else. Thank you, everybody, for checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend. Stay positive. Talk to you Monday.